initiated the reconciliation of all things to himself through the blood of the cross. God restored the original harmony. His reign of peace now extends to every visible thing on the earth and as well as invisible things which are in the heavenly realms. Not only that, but all the broken and dislocated pieces of the universe, people, things, animals, and atoms get properly fixed together in vibrant harmonies, all because of his death. Colossians 1:20, the mirror. I just love that. Welcome. This is Intentional Now podcast, an engaging workshop discussion on change and purpose and redefining. What do we say yes to? Hello, I am Kristen Wambeck. I am a spiritual entrepreneur. I'm chasing bold dreams, doing the work and asking the questions and getting life done. Done, you might say? The life that we're meant to live. Let's do this. Good morning, listeners. Hello, hello. I have a treat for you today. And yes, I kept it a very good secret. Didn't tell anybody. The weather here in the Pacific Northwest has finally heated up. And yes, all your Oregonians are complaining it's too hot or complaining it's too cold. But it's wonderful. I like the heat. Good morning. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Mike Parsons, and he is from Barnstaple, England. And I was looking back in my journaling notes, and my first note was in 2014. And actually, what I found it interesting when I did the search, I had 123 notes with your name on it. So, welcome. Yeah, I went, oh my goodness. Thank you for being a very honoring and very helpful influence in my life and my relationship with heaven. I originally met Mike. He invited me to sit in on one of his supernatural mentoring groups ages ago. And it was a great time. It was just a great time. I still have people. There's one particular mentoring group where Bracy and I really were zealous. I still have people contact me from that original mentoring group. So welcome, Mike. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Fond memories from being with you in Corvallis and around the area in the past.
I know. What was really fun, the part fun of seeing you have fun, because there are different laws in the UK versus in the United States. And I remember you go, can I shoot a gun? And so my boys were here, and here comes all the weapons and the ammo, because we're Americans and we have weapons. And it was fun. It was really fun. Yeah. Just the difference in the countries. I wanted to share with my listeners what my first impression of you when I sent you that original email, and the word that comes to mind is graciousness. And then today, what would be my impression today is authentic graciousness. And that word graciousness is not terribly too masculine, but it is the essence of the Father that I've witnessed in your ministry. And I want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Right.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, I need to share your ministry is Freedom Arc, which has an absolutely awesome blog. Wonderful. Sons of Issachar. And you have published 2 books thus far, My Journey Beyond Beyond, and then The Restoration of All Things, My Continuing Journey Beyond Beyond. So thank you for sharing yourself in a written form.
Yeah. I mean, they were, I'm not exactly a writer, but I enjoyed doing it because it was just sharing testimonies of what happened over the last, 14 years or so. So yeah, it was good to share with people in a written form. Obviously, I've done lots of material, videos and YouTube videos and other things, but put it all together into a book sort of crystallizes it down so people can sort of have a look at the journey themselves and see where their journey will take them. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have a needful question. I have a needful question that I know that it would minister to me, and if it ministers to me, it would minister to others. So, in a nutshell, how do you get creation to respond? Let me put that in a needful form. My little King Charles dog, my little King Charles Spaniel, which is a gift to me, has a really bad staph infection that won't go away. So what's interesting is obviously I have been trying to heal her, right?
Yep.
This process going through deliverance with her. And it's interesting that God, he takes me in the spirit to heal people who have the same disease. So my question to you is, how do you get creation to respond? But I do need a response from creation, which to help this situation, which is really painful.
Oh, it's an interesting question. I think using creation in its broadest sense is probably easier to answer than creation in a very specific sense for your dog. But
well, it's a generality because there are feelings and emotions that are wrapped around that. So when there's hurt and pain, it makes it, oh, I don't know how to explain it. It means it's kind of like you kind of need this now.
yeah. I mean, in the simplest thing, if I am ever engaging with anything, I'm just going to go to the Father and ask him what to do, or find his heart in it. And obviously, every situation is complex and different. And I don't know whether what's happening with your dog is a result of something else, or it's just something that's happened. I think creation itself is groaning and it's looking for sonship. So if our manifestation of sonship is aligned to the Father's heart, then creation begins to respond to us. And obviously, ministering to a particular part of creation, you then have to align what is going on with that part of creation rather than the general sense of all creation. And what I found, I guess, over a period of time, that all creation is sentient and can communicate. The whole of creation is groaning or longing for something, sort of indicates some level of thought or connection. And I do believe that God has created things in a way that reflects him. Therefore, he's relational. Therefore, the whole of creation was created to be relational, to be harmonious. I love the passage that you read from Colossians 1:20 onwards, and it's just a powerful passage which really describes how Jesus created everything for relationship, and through him on the cross as wanting to restore everything, reconcile everything back to relationship. So that for me is part of how I engage creation, is looking to engage the emotions that I am picking up in any particular aspect of it, whether it be the planet itself, and sometimes you engage the whole planet, or you engage the core of the planet. Sometimes you engage the tectonic plates of the planet, or you engage the elements of the planet, the earth or the air or the water, those sort of elemental things. And I'm then looking to find what is the issue that I have any mandate or authorization to deal with. And alongside that, if I speak with the authority of God's voice, or I speak as his voice, then creation responds. But there you need to know identity of who you really are to be able to speak that way. And I found, for me, intimacy, brooding in his presence, aligning myself by just resonating with his heart and his thoughts and his intentions would change me to enable me to do whatever I needed to do within those intentions. So I don't want to do anything outside of the intentions of his heart. Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to look to perceive what is the Father doing in any situation, and then am I aligned with his heart? Am I resonating with his intentions? Then when I speak, creation responds generally. And that means I can choose realities that align with the Father's intentions. You know, I can't just choose realities because I happen to want something to be true, but
Mm-hmm.
creation is designed, because creation, really, we're talking about light.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is made up of vibrating frequencies of light,
Mm-hmm.
some of which are solid and which we see, and some of which we can't see, but they still exist. And light is designed, and it's living. You know, it's not a dead thing, because God is light, and
Mm-hmm.
everything has been formed or created from him and through him. Therefore, everything is connected to light and to the frequency of his voice. And when we speak with that frequency aligned, then creation responds to us. And light literally chooses to align with what we say. And that quantum physically is, you know, the observer.
Yeah.
The reality. And so that's a science thing, but science doesn't really break it down to the individual. That they really only really look at it as a conceptual thing. And most quantum physicists that I've seen wouldn't apply that to their everyday life. You know, they sort of see it as more of a physics concept, and they don't understand it because it seems more spiritual than it does physical in that sense. And therefore, most people see that that is a truth that they can do experiments to prove, but they're not really believing that that's something that we can live by. But actually, the reality is we can,
Mm-hmm.
if we're aligned to the Father's heart. So as I brood in intimacy with the Father, it changes me, aligns me with the Father's heart. And then when I speak, creation responds, light responds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't do that if you're double-minded or with any doubt or unbelief, because every time we choose to do something, there is infinite numbers of things we could choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
Most people only choose to do the things that align to the memory that they already have. So they're basically replicating what's already happened in their lives again and again and again, because they just choose out of memory to continue that way of living. If you're aligned with the Father's desires and heart, you can see something which is not in your past, but in your future. So you're looking, what is God's heart for the future? How do I call that future into being? And every one of those things that exist as timelines, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
if there are multiple ones and you are wavering to which one to choose, then you usually do default back to what you already know, and you keep replicating it. But if you can choose a future which is aligned to the Father's heart and just focus on the one thing, literally, so quantum physicists call it popping a quiff, in that you choose that and there's nothing else that exists for you at that moment, then you can manifest what you're choosing. And you're choosing a reality that then begins to form around you. And literally every other possibility just fades away and light forms that reality, and then you live in it. Now, the complication comes in is that you can't do that for somebody else, generally speaking, unless they're in agreement. So when someone's in agreement with you, then agreement causes manifestation for more than just that one person. But generally speaking, we're only responsible and able to choose realities around our lives. And the impact that has on others would be impacting them in a positive way of blessing them, even if they don't choose it. But if they choose an opposite path, then they have a right to choose the path they want to follow. So although you may be providing an environment that enables them to have a choice, they may not choose it. And there you can't manipulate and control somebody by choosing the reality for somebody else. So I can't choose someone else's reality. I can only choose mine. But the more people who come together in agreement with one mind and one heart and one purpose aligned to the Father's heart, the easier it is then to start choosing things on a bigger scale. And you have the stories of, is it Dr. Emoto, who was getting people to focus intention? And he had in Japan, I think there was a lake in Japan that had pollution. And he got a whole load of people to come together in agreement to focus their good thoughts and intentions for the cleansing of the water, and the water was cleansed. Because it happened to be that there was enough intention and choice, I guess, to effectively form that reality. And he says the power of thoughts, the power of words, and intentionality can affect lots of things. And he's done lots of experiments where he cooks some rice and he puts it in two pots, seals it up, and then puts hate on one pot on a label, and then puts love on the other pot on a label. And within a few days, the one pot is gone putrid, and the other pot just keeps on lasting and doesn't go bad. Because it's the power of the words, but the intentions behind the words, which has an effect, So our intentions are really important, and how we focus those intentions aligned to the Father's heart. So if you don't know the Father's heart, it's really difficult to choose a reality. Now, if you do engage the Father's heart, then you've got to outwork that through who you are, because I would do it differently from you, and we're all different. So the way we do it and the choices we make to outwork the Father's heart would be multiple, and therefore I can choose to do it differently one day from the next day, but I'm always aligned to the Father's heart. So it sort of makes it not boring, for sure, and there's always something you can begin to engage with. So when it then comes to, say, things that I want to do that are aligned to God's heart, I can choose the reality. Now I know how to do it now because the Father has shown me, and I know how light responds because I've seen light responding, and I know when I speak out of the Father's heart, then I know that voice has a resonance that light responds to. So I mean, I've got lots of examples of where that has affected my own reality and the choices I make. And some of those things would be seen as pretty supernatural, in that something happens which is not normally possible. And I've sort of chosen a reality which is like, okay, I'm not accepting the present state of things. I want this different. I want it changed.
Agree.
So that's happened a lot when I travel, and it has a lot when I sort of fly and do different things. When things happen which sort of could disrupt my sort of in schedule and everything else, then I choose a reality where it doesn't. Now, one example would that be, I was in Hanover in Germany, and I was doing a conference, and then I was coming back, and I flew to Brussels to get a flight back to England because there was no direct flight. And I was sitting in the airport, just relaxing, editing some video, actually audio, I think it was. And I just lost track of the time. And then I picked up in the atmosphere just some negativity. So I looked around, and people were looking quite anxious. So I went up to the flight desk and said, "Oh, what's the problem?" And they said, "Oh, we're having a problem with the tunnel thing. It's not connected at one end, and we can't let you walk across it to get onto the plane until it's fixed." So which was, because there was a gap, and health and safety and all this stuff. So I said to, and immediately I knew the solution. The solution just came to me. So I said, "Here's the solution. Use the gate below this one," because we were on the first floor and there was a ground floor, "and walk to the plane and give us a steps to go up onto the plane." "Oh, we can't do that. We can't do that." I said, "Okay, fine." So I went and sat back down, carried on what I was doing. And, the flight was only an hour and 20 minutes, I think, an hour and 30 minutes, something like that. But eventually they did exactly what I said to do. And they said, "We need to go down to the gate below," because they couldn't fix the tunnel. And we were over an hour late taking off. Okay, so we're an hour late taking off. It's an hour and 20 flight, and we've all got connections that we need to be there on time to get. And there's lots of people, and they're all anxious, and they're all pretty annoyed, because they could have solved this problem. We would have taken off on time if they just listened. or been a bit more creative about it rather than jobs worse. And this is what part of the problem. People don't find creativity very easily. They just thought, well, I can't do that. I said, well, okay, fine. So I was on the plane and it was like, okay, I chose the reality that I'm not going to miss my flight. That was the reality. There was no other option. There was no worry, anxiety, concern. I was not going to miss my flight. And therefore, neither was anybody else on the plane. So I wanted to bless everybody, but I wasn't going to miss my flight. I made that choice. Now, normally, sometimes I just leave it there. And then you could say the universe responds, or light responds, and things happen. And in this instant, I actually thought, no, actually, I'm gonna send some angels ahead of the plane to actually open up a warp field that will bend space for us to get there on time. I just thought, I didn't know, just thought that. I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just bend space. I'll get the angels to do it because they fly with me. They can do it for me. So I just sat down and carried on. I was doing reading or something. And about 10 minutes later, the cabin staff all started smiling because they were not making eye contact with anyone to begin with, because it was a very short flight normally, and they just didn't want to be involved in contention. Right. So they just kept to themselves. And then I saw them all smiling, and they started announcing where the gates were for connections and everything else. And basically we got there on time, and it was like, okay. But then I discovered that I was then flying to England outside of the continent of Europe. So I had to go through another terminal and then go back through security and everything. So I got off the plane and I was carrying on, and it's like, but I'm okay. This won't be a problem. And then there was a girl who actually, she must have been in her early 20s. She saw me, and I can't remember. I spoke to someone and she said, "Are you English?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm going to Bristol. And I think I'm going to miss the flight because we have got to go." And I said, "No, I'm going to Bristol as well. Just walk with me. We'll be fine." So we walked together, and we were just chit-chatting a little bit, and we walked together. We got to the security, and it was a big, long line. And I could see her face. She was looking like, "Oh, no." And it's not going to affect me. So we just walked right through it. Like literally we were on the other side. And she was like, I could see her face was like, "What happened? How did we do that?" And I just smiled, and we just got on the plane and got back. And it's like, I could have panicked, or I could have thought, "Oh no, I'm going to miss my flight. I won't be able to get back today. I won't be there tomorrow. I've got things I'm doing tomorrow." And then all of a sudden you have all of these, "Oh no, worry." Yeah. But if you're going to, you've got to take those things captive, or ultimately when you've practiced at this, you don't have those thoughts at all, because it's like, no, I'm not having negative thoughts. So then you choose some realities, and that reality happened. Now you could say, well, it's a coincidence, but actually you can't fly from Hanover to Brussels in less than 20 minutes. It's impossible, from a natural perspective. But we got there, and none of them could explain it, obviously. We just got there, and they were all really happy. We got there.
Yes.
It's things like that you can choose to do, and I've chosen lots of things like that, which I always check it out with the Father first, because I don't want to assume that what I want is aligned to what he wants. I'm going to check it out. So, and on other occasions, there have been situations where I didn't change the reality. I was in Toronto, I think, and I was flying to Winnipeg, and I was in plenty of time. I was transferring to an internal flight, and I had to check my baggage back in, because I had to get my bags and check them back in and get on the other flight. And I was waiting for my bags to come off the carousel, and they just didn't come off. There was like everyone else's came off, and I'm just standing there on my own with no bags. And I'm like, okay. And immediately I thought, okay, I'm going to change this. And then I had a check in my spirit, and I checked it out with the Father, and it was like, no, just wait, just rest, just wait there. So I waited there, and eventually my bags came off for no apparent reason that they were delayed, but they were. So I went up to the check-in desk. They said, well, you've missed that flight. We'll get you on the next flight, which is only half an hour later. So I said, oh, great, fine. Checked in the bags, went over to the area where you sit and wait to get on the plane. And there was this lady there, and she sort of asked me where I was going and why I was going. And I just said, well, I'm going to Winnipeg. I'm going to do a conference. She said, oh, what sort of conference? And I said, well, it's a Christian conference, but it's a different conference because it's talking about, Christianity and science and quantum physics. And she said, wow, that's really amazing. What's all that about? And she said, I'm a scientist. So we had this amazing conversation that God had engineered. So if I changed the thing and caught my original flight, I would have missed that opportunity. So you've got to be sensitive and not make assumptions about, okay, well, I'm going to change this because I can.
Right, right.
And another occasion, I was in New Zealand and I was speaking in Auckland, and it was an amazing evening, and it was just like absolute thunderstorm, thunder and lightning. And I was speaking with this lightning flashing in the background. It was great. I mean, I was, really enjoying it. It was so much fun. I was talking about angels and all sorts of stuff.
But you weren't the sound man.
I wasn't the sound man, no. And I sort of finished, and everyone left, and I'm usually the last one to sort of leave, having chatted to everyone and talked to her, and so I eventually got out, and there was outside the building were all these cars lined up, and apparently the caretaker, because we were the last people in the building, had locked the gate and locked everyone in the car park, and they couldn't get out. So it was like, okay, I didn't know what was going on. So I went up to the front car who was by the gate, and there was the two ladies there. One of them was a Hindu, and another one was a not yet believer at the time. And they were invited by a friend of mine to come and listen. Mm-hmm. So I said, what's going on? They said, oh, the gate is locked. We can't get out. We're waiting for someone to call the thing, but they didn't know the caretaker's number. So they were all stuck there. Anyway, so they said, what? And they with us quite a glint in their eye. They were sort of joking, but they said, oh, do you think you could ask one of those angels to open the gate? So I looked at them and I said, no, it's okay. I'll open the gate for you. And they said, well, it's locked. I said, don't worry. So I went up to the gate and I opened the padlock, just opened it just like that, because I just chose that's what I was going to do. Uh-huh. And they looked at me as if it was like, how did you do that? It's like, but I chose to do it because God didn't want everyone stuck there. You don't want me stuck there either. I needed to get back and, get something to eat and go to bed or whatever. So it was like, so I chose the reality. Now, what happens when you choose a reality like that? Every other possibility exists. There was no thought in my mind that I couldn't open the gate. The gate wouldn't open. It was just a foregone conclusion. It was going to open. And it did. If you're doubting, oh, should I do it? Could I do this? Can I do this? It just doesn't really work. You've got to, God doesn't doubt. When Jesus created everything, he wasn't doubting, oh, I wonder whether this will work. It's just like it was his intention, his desire, and he just spoke it into being. So in a sense, that's what we do. Whether we use, words that we speak, or we are the frequency of that intention, that's the key. And intentionality is really, really important when it comes to engaging with creation, because you've got to be intentional about it. Yeah. And you've got to look to feel and experience what creation is engaging in, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I did, and this helps me learn because it's really practical, and then they're going on in my life right now. Yeah. I went back on her generational line and took care of some traumas and stuff. So we took her to an acupuncturist, and he was into Chinese medicine. And I really understood what he was talking about, very much so. When he said, well, she has too much wind, too much heat, so I went, oh, okay, I can do with that. So I came home, and then I asked the elements, the wind, and she told me that I needed to send the wind back because she came from Ohio, and that wind had traveled with her here. So I had her, and she was on the couch, doing deliverance on my dog, right? And my husband's sitting there having coffee, and I'm just doing like this. And so I'm talking to Gail,
Mm.
which is the element, the wind,
Yeah.
and she says, send it back. And so I went, you kind of go, well, how do you, oh, okay, so don't think about it. I said, well, the wind of Ohio, you don't belong here. You go back. And immediately my dog goes like this, and my husband goes, I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it.
Yeah. Mm.
And, you know, and so, yes, and there's been other, and then with the fire, there's been other issues with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I keep going because it's, so when I hear you, the intent, so because it's painful, when there's pain involved, it's hard to hang on to the intent.
Yeah, it is. And in a sense, that would come for, even if you're looking for healing for yourself, when there's a symptom, you have to be able to see the result, not the present situation. So it is difficult. And a lot of people struggle with the whole thing of healing. You know, I've gone through many different sort of journeys in healing to come to a sort of sense of, well, actually, Jesus wants us to be immortal, not just to be healed all the time. And actually, therefore, you go to health, you know, so it's health. And if you're healthy, then you won't die. So immortality has come to light through the gospel. But when people have got a symptom, they find it really difficult to hold on to that reality because they're reminded of the present situation all the time. And that's when the doubt and unbelief come in. Now, I don't know with a dog how you can get the dog's agreement for the healing, if you like, because with a person, you would be looking for them to come into agreement. But it's complicated because some people just don't get healed. And no matter who prays for them, it just doesn't seem to happen. And you think, why?
Yeah.
It's like this person has healed everybody. But then you get stories like Bill Johnson saying that, I think, is it his son who's deaf, and yet prays for a whole load of people who are deaf and they get healed and he's not healed. And you just think, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why? What is it about that? And sometimes you just got to say, I don't understand. God, what's going on? I don't understand. And sometimes he might tell you, and sometimes he might not. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, I'm going to trust you. You're going to bring good out of this anyway.
Right.
And sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, because you learn so much on the journey that when you get to the destination, you're changed and you have a whole lot more. So if something happens in an instant, you don't get a journey. So sometimes it's like when Jesus prayed for the people who were the lepers, he sent them on a journey to go and present themselves. Right. And one of them was grateful and came back. Now, I don't know whether he was the only one who actually followed through and got healed, or whether he was the only one who was grateful enough to come back. You don't know. But bottom line is, there was a journey. And one of the words that is used for healing in the New Testament in Greek is therapeuo, which is where we get therapy from, not miracle.
Right.
Some of them, miracles happen instantly.
Yes.
Therapies happen on a journey of some sort. And for that, people walked, and eventually one of them came back and thanked Jesus because he walked on the journey, listened, and he followed. So sometimes I think the journey has a purpose that we can't always see when we want an instant result. So we learn things that only God knows what we need to learn on any journey. And therefore I'm always sort of like, okay, I'm not going to get frustrated or disappointed, because there must be a reason, and I'm going to trust God that that reason is good. Now, it's difficult when someone's suffering, or where your dog's suffering, and you're looking, well, that doesn't seem very fair. Why they continue to suffer? Why does this person continue to suffer? I've just got to the point where, okay, God is good. He's good all the time. He's love. He loves unconditionally. Therefore, I can't question, because I'm not God and I don't know, but I know he's good, and that's not going to shake it. But sometimes complicated situations, and you've been looking to unpack what's going on, and you've found quite a lot of stuff already about what's going on, even in a situation with a dog.
And I'm being I'm traveling in the spirit, healing people with the same issues.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
respond. So, I respond to her the same way that I saw myself in the spirit heal like an infant, an infant and the mom, and of the same
Yeah.
thing, the staph infection on the skin. And I do the same thing with my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my experience with engaging with the angels and fallen angels and all sorts of aspects of creation and dimensional beings and all sorts of stuff, is I don't make any assumptions, and I realize that a lot of what is I have got no idea or clue about, but I just keep walking with the Father and sort of discover more and more as I go. What I've actually discovered is that a lot of the time our level of understanding our identity in sonship isn't enough to convince them that we have the authority to do what we're trying to do. That's what I've discovered.
Say that again. See that
well,
again.
Yeah, I don't know what I just said, but I'll just say it, try and say it. Essentially, it's like what I've discovered is that as you engage different aspects of creation, they respond to the level of authority you have in your identity as sons. And sometimes we don't know our identity full enough for them to recognize us as sons. So we're still in a process of transformation, transfiguration, renewing our minds. And sometimes we operate in wishful thinking without really having that full, total conviction that creation needs to respond to us. And I've had to convince aspects of creation and beings that I'm for them, because a lot of people are not. And they've listened to a lot of what has been said by people, and they've heard a lot of things by religious people, and they've heard a lot of things from people who don't seem to be that loving and whatever, and therefore they don't trust us. And creation needs to trust us again. Mm-hmm. So when you got that passage in Romans 8, where it talks about creation being set free from its bondage to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God.
Right.
Not that many of the children of God are clothed with glory. So they don't know the essence of who they really are. Therefore, creation doesn't recognize them. Therefore, when you come up against an aspect of creation and they're doubting what you're saying, you've got to find a way of engaging them. And I've chosen to do that when I engage certain beings and things. It's like, firstly, I have to show that I'm genuine in my desire for them to be restored. Yeah. That's the first thing. And if I'm not genuine, and genuine doesn't mean that I'm not necessarily wanting them to be, but I've got to be unwavering in my desire and belief that this will take place. And therefore, sometimes I look at some of the things I engage and I'm like, they must see on my face that I'm like, what is this? Who are you? What are you? What's this all about? And therefore, sometimes I've got to take sort of, okay, I need to just draw breath here, and I need to compose myself, come back to a place of rest. And then usually in that moment, I've engaged with the Father and I've got the Father's heart. And then I can then begin to express the Father's heart, which I'm now in agreement with fully, because some of the things I see are pretty ugly looking things. Yeah. They're not pleasant to look at, and what they're doing and have done is not pleasant to see. And therefore you sometimes have a reaction in your spirit, or more in your soul. Actually, it's probably a soul reaction, is like not quite as much love as God has, let's say. And therefore then I've got to sort of come back and engage the love of God again, and then start to express that. So that has all sorts of connotations. I remember engaging with a group of people, and we were engaging around the earth in there's a shield around the earth that God has been putting together for a while, of people whose desire is to shield the earth from external influences and then to minister into the earth. And we started to engage that, and we started to engage with the core of the earth. And all of us just felt drawn to engage the core of the earth. And the core of the earth actually expressed its displeasure at why it's always associated with negative things, because it seemed as well, that's where hell is, or that's where this is, and this, that, and the other. And it was like, and so we had to apologize for the way we had disrespected the core of the earth by associating negative things like under the earth. That's where bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's where the devil's lair is. I mean, all that, it's all mythology in one sense, because it's not, we're not talking about physical realities, we're talking about spiritual realities, but it affects the physical reality. And the core of the earth expressed its displeasure.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so, okay, how are we going to respond? So we apologized. We said, basically, on behalf of everyone who's negatively indicated this stuff, we apologize. We really ask you to forgive us.
Yeah.
And we really want to engage, and we want to cooperate together to bring stability to the earth, or to bring blessing to the earth, because the core of the earth is part of the responsibility for the magnetic field of the earth, and the magnetic field of the earth can have issues which then form different things in the environment which are not healthy. So we sort of started to engage and whatever, and then it said, and particularly the issue over where these beings have been chained up, which is Tartarus.
Yes,
where the fallen watcher angels are chained up. In Peter, it talks about it.
Yes.
So we're like, oh, okay, what are we going to do about that? So it's like we were all like looking at each other, and we're like, we've got no idea what to do here. Absolutely no idea what to do here. But okay, well, let's go and ask the Father. Let's go and engage, see what he wants us to do. So we ended up engaging with the Father, and it was like we had a sort of process that he showed us that we needed to go through to get to the point where we could set a group of angelic beings free, or help them to become restored, or other things. And it was like, okay, so we had to go back to the core of the earth and say, look, sorry, we can't do anything about this right now, but we've been given a process that actually in the future we will be able to deal with this. So sometimes you just got to, interact and react and go with the flow of what's going on. But there is a sense where a lot of people presume that they know who they are, but really don't. And creation will just, know they're blagging, really. I mean, essentially, you can't blag. You've got to be genuine, and you've got to be real. And therefore, you really do have to know. And you might just know in that instance, and it might not be a general thing all the time that but in that instance, you've got to know. And therefore, you're totally confident in what you're doing in that instance. And therefore, when it comes to something, like you dealing with your dog or dealing with something, sometimes it's like, I realize I don't know. And there's lots of things I could do, and I know how to do, and I know how to engage with anointing for healing in certain things. But sometimes, as you found, okay, there may be issues here which are beyond the physical, and there are spiritual dynamics here. And, there may be, as you see, trauma things there, which have been lodged within the cells of the dog itself, or, as I say, passed on epigenetically, because at the end of the day, epigenetics is not actually just for human beings.
No.
DNA can contain memory, and so can epigenetic factors can be passed on from generation to generation in dogs as well as humans. So there is quite complex issues around it. And I mean, bottom line is, I can't give you an answer to your specific situation with your dog, but it seems like you're doing the right things.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just that when I was listening to the other interviews, one of the things that struck me is how you wrapped the frequency of God's heart around you. And I went, note to self.
Yes.
Note to self. I went, okay, that's good. That's really good. And so that was a highlighted point to me. And
I do that, but then I also surround what I'm dealing with that frequency as well. So I encompass it in love, because literally God is love, and the frequency that I engage in his intentions is always going to be a manifestation of his love. Therefore, I then surround things with his love, because I'm surrounding them with my desire, which is an expression of his desire.
Right.
And so, yeah, in this situation, try that with the dog. It's like, okay, I'm going to surround you. I'm going to extend my spiritual boundary, and I have rivers of living water flowing with energy and life and health and wholeness. And I'm going to put it around you, and I'm going to hold you in my heart and within the intention of my desire for health and wholeness for the dog. And then you're in sense creating an environment that is protecting them from any external influence and is holding them in an atmosphere of love, so that their physical body can respond to that frequency of
to
love.
The original template.
But it's the healing frequency, because it's, and there's all sorts of other things you can do. I mean, you can use Rife machine frequencies. You can use all sorts of.
Guess what? So now that you brought that up, so I was sitting at dinner the other night with my son and his girlfriend and Don for Dad's Day, and all of a sudden his girlfriend started talking about her grandmother, right? Yeah. And she goes, my grandmother, and she had leukemia, and da 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 da. And she goes, yeah, have you ever heard of the Rife thing? And I went, tell me more. And so then she said that her grandma has one of those machines.
Yeah.
As one of those machines, that she was talking to me about it because she was thinking about it for my dog, right? And she said, I went, and so they just got it out of storage because the grandparents moved. So I just went, are you guys using this? The sound and the frequency. But she told me the story of how they had to hide and go behind the scenes to actually purchase one of those machines. So
yeah,
it's interesting that you mention it.
Yeah, in the US, you're not allowed to purchase one whole, I don't think, or they don't like it anyway. Now, Raymond Royal Rife, who developed that, was a scientist, I think in the 30s, and he was operating on a sort of electron microscope at looking at things at a deeper level, and he noticed that frequency seemed to have an effect on cells. So he then tried to replicate that and produced a machine that produced frequencies that then could be applied to cancer patients or terminally ill patients. And literally, he had, I think, 14 terminally ill patients that he was given a few months to be able to apply frequencies to, and all of them were healed, every one of them.
Her grandmother was healed.
Yeah, every one of them was healed. But obviously, at that point in time, he was given Doctor of the Year award. Literally. Or I think maybe not doctor, a scientist or so, because I'm not sure he wasn't an actual medical doctor, but he was a PhD of something, I think. And he was given this award, and then all of a sudden, all sorts of things started to go on in the scene, and all his research was lost. He died in an unexplained way, and it was a big fire in his lab, and everything was lost.
Yeah.
And therefore, nothing really came of it. So now I think God is unveiling and revealing that everything really operates on frequency and intention and this sort of stuff, that some people are now rediscovering Rife frequencies. So there are a lot of Rife machines out there. Some of them are quite big and expensive. Some of them are smaller. I used a machine called Spooky 2. Not that I needed it for myself. But it's called Spooky 2 because Albert Einstein called quantum entanglement that spooky. Because it is weird, isn't it? How
it's totally weird.
Can instantly connect billions of miles apart, I know. So literally they called it Spooky 2, and it's just quite a smallish little machine like that. I bought one imported it from the Far East somewhere, and Hong Kong, I think, and was using it, had a couple of them. We got it here in our sort of therapeutic room, and it operates in multiple different ways. You can put frequencies into water, drink the water. You can hold plasma coils, which actually goes into the body, or you can operate on in quantum entanglement. So you can use a little bit of nail, which carries your DNA. You put it into this chamber. The frequencies are applied to the chamber, which actually affect the person.
Yeah, and draw those because the
Yeah,
DNA attracts itself to
yeah,
itself.
absolutely. So, you could get a bit of your dog's DNA, put it in that, apply and what you do biofeedback scans to find out what's actually wrong. Because a lot of things on the surface symptom are not actually what's really going on in the body. And there's often toxins and other things, parasites, all sorts of stuff that goes on in the
Yeah.
body. And so anyway, there's a lot of things like that do work. And it even works on a pretty weird stuff. You can put green fly in this chamber and it will apply a frequency around a certain distance around your house that all the free green fly will just disappear from the garden, because it basically provides a frequency that hits against the green fly frequency, and they just like disappear or don't come near. There's all sorts of stuff like that. You can put mold in there that actually then removes the effect of mold on the body, because you're hitting it with a complementary frequency. It's like hitting it with a jackhammer. You find the frequency that this thing is vibrating at, then you come at it with a much stronger frequency and you basically destroy it.
But technically, it's like a prophetic sign of who we are. We should be able to,
yes, and that's where I've come
resonate at that frequency.
Exactly. I believe this is a temporary transitional thing, that we're using technologies to do things that ultimately we will be able to choose with the power of our consciousness and thought.
Right, just like a cell phone.
Yeah, you just focus the intention and you focus it into that situation and you change it. But there's a lot of these things around which are, I wouldn't, I'm not saying don't use them, because I think if you don't know how to focus your intention and do that, this is a solution.
It'll
which
help.
may be transition, but actually use it. And there's all sorts of machines. People use gem therapy, they're using light therapy,
yeah,
they're using all sorts of plasma therapies, different therapies. A friend of mine who had cancer, she was told she was terminal. She just refused to accept it. She asked the father what to do. She started applying certain things that he told her. One of them was using a particular sort of therapy machine called a beamer, which is designed to create sort of blood flow, in the system. And she used that, and with a few other supplements that he told her to take, and basically her cancer markers just went down and down and down, and she's fine.
Yeah.
And she was only given a few weeks to live, really. Basically, they told her she needed to go to hospice. She just refused it. Well, I'm not accepting that. I'm not done. God's got a destiny for me to do. And eventually she learned to apply those things. Yeah. Now she's got a therapeutic wellness center that she manages. And there are a lot of people now developing wellness centers that are looking to apply more alternative things to the solutions to the problems. But I do believe ultimately frequency is in frequency, and whether you produce it within a machine or whether you can focus your consciousness to choose that reality and that frequency to manifest, I don't think they're any different. But I think most people don't know how to do it. So you have to practice. It takes a time to practice how to generate that intention and focus that intention, and therefore have no doubt or unbelief. That's I think the biggest problem is double-mindedness for most people. They really want to believe it, but they don't believe it. And therefore, when it comes to doing it, they're really hoping it's going to happen. And hoping's not enough when you choose a reality. You can't hope a reality is going to manifest.
Yeah.
Now, everyone does it every day, every decision they make.
Yes.
I could choose to do something right now, which would affect your reality. I could get up and walk out of the room, and I wouldn't be talking to you. That would be a choice. And if I did it, that would manifest, because it's just a choice. And eventually that would be the reality. That would become history, because you would have it recorded that I wasn't in the seat anymore. What happened? But right now, it's only a possibility that I'm not going to choose to do.
Right.
But I can choose lots of other possibilities. Like whatever I'm going to say is a choice.
It is.
No, I'm not thinking about it. I'm instinctively responding, because I don't think about the answers I ever talk about anything. I just let it out of my spirit, because essentially I've already prepared in the realms of heaven before time. I'm already ready for anything, because I'm there sitting in heavenly places, And so it's sort of, but it is practice. It takes time, and we're not taught how to do it in normal Christian things, or even in
I know.
even
Who
in
talks
sort of
about this stuff?
wider things. It's like, it's not, people aren't taught. Generally, some people can do it, but they tend to keep it to themselves, and they don't share with others how to do it, because essentially you're giving away secrets, and secrets give you power and authority. And I just want to give everything away, so I'll tell anybody anything they want to know, and I tell anything. But that doesn't mean that people can just go and do it, because I've got a journey that has brought me to that point. And if they don't have that journey themselves in their own way to come to a place where they are intimate with the Father's heart and entangled with him, then they'll be needing to go on that journey to bring them to that place where they really know the Father's heart, and they know who they are. Because, you can only get your identity from the Father. Most of us have our identity from the world and our upbringing and our cultural sort of experiences. That shaped what we think about ourselves. We need that renewing of the mind to start thinking about ourselves the way God thinks about us. And he has a lot of thoughts about us. Instead, it says in Psalm 139, a vast sum of thoughts about us, in fact. How many of them do we know? How many of them are we in agreement with? And if we are, then the more we are, the more we'll actually be who he says we are, rather than what anyone else says or what we might have thought. So,
I agree. I agree. Woohoo. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, I'm kind of going, ooh, do I ask one more question or do I wrap it up now? It's good. Thank you. How are you doing on time, Mike?
Well, I haven't got that much time longer, because I've got to get home, cook my meal, and then come back, because I've got another meeting later. So, but I'm okay for a few minutes. So.
Well, I don't ever see you answer anything in a few minutes.
Probably not, no.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm thinking. I think we should probably leave it there.
Okay, that's great. And if you ever want to do it again, I'm always available.
Yes, I have some thoughts to share, especially on Sheol. So
yeah, plenty of experiences around that to
share. Yeah. It's quite interesting. So, but I want to be respectful of your time. So we would have time for you to release an activation. Yes.
Okay. What sort of activation do you want to
do? Yeah, you turned that right back around and said, what kind of activation do you want to do? Okay. Would you hand me from the Father's heart? And it would be, if you're handing it to me, it would be individually handing it to each listener. But would you hand me a portion of Father's heart that he feels is needful for me today?
Okay. Yeah, I can do something like that, I guess. I mean, best thing for me, I'll just check it out with the Father, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think what the Father wants everybody to know in a more deep and intimate way is unconditional love.
Right.
And the frequency of unconditional love will actually begin to transform our whole being into who he says we are. So I encourage you to close your eyes and just start to focus your intention, your thinking, your thoughts on the Father's face, and just breathe slowly and breathe deeply, and just come to a place of rest where you're just resting in the presence of the Father. You're resting in the presence of love. And the Father is releasing that love to you. He's surrounding you, cocooning you with his love. That love is resting on you, and you're feeling the weight of that love, his unconditional love for you, no conditions attached. That love is pouring into you like a river of living water, love flowing from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, that love flowing from your innermost being, touching every cell of your body, every thought in your mind, every memory in your heart, and transforming everything into an experience of unconditional love. And as that love is filling you and filling you and filling you, you're coming to a place of absolute peace, full joy, resting in living loved, that he is loving you right now. And I want you just to think of others who you know need to experience that love. And from what you are experiencing, release that love as a river of living water flowing from your innermost being, flowing from your spirit, soul, body around you, and encompass those people that you want to focus that intention of love on, and surround them with that energy field of love, that frequency of love, and let them be encompassed and surrounded with love. So freely you're receiving, freely you're releasing. And I'm just going to release a frequency. It's a sound bath of love, the frequency of love. You're bathing in love, soaking in love, that love touching every part of your being. Yeah.
That was interesting why I asked that request.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I asked that request, because all of a sudden I saw the heart, the organ is just was right there, right? Okay. And so that's why I asked the request. And then what I received from the request, and this is a pretty graphic picture that he created in my mind, but from the movie Dances with Wolves, when they went out hunting the buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Which was very needful for them. And so Kevin Costner got his first kill of the buffalo. And in the scene, when they stripped open the animal and were preparing it, his best friend, who was his best friend? I don't remember his name. He hands him the heart. And Kevin Costner goes like this, right? And he goes, And basically what the first thing that they did when they killed, they ate the heart.
Yeah. The essence of the animal. Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened to me when I saw the heart, was to eat the heart, which eats the victory and the provision.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is very fun, good stuff. I appreciate it so much. I will leave the links for the listeners to find your books and to be able to find you. So it'll be there in the episode description. Mike, if you just hold on a sec here, I'm going to say goodbye to the listeners, and I will see you next week.